Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished judges and coaches, world-class performers and aspiring dancers, welcome to this morning's third annual The Art of Diplomacy conference here at the University of Montana. My name is Abraham Kim. I'm the Executive Director of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center at the University of Montana. We are an institution that advocates the learning of other international cultures, traditions, languages, and art forms as an important way to prepare our students to be leaders in the 21st century. In the partnership with the Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater and the Ballet Beyond Borders competition, I am pleased that we can collaborate on this week-long dance competition for the third year together to bring top performances, world-class talent, and leaders with amazing stories from around the world to here in snowy, beautiful Missoula, Montana. I know many of you, to all the performers from all around the world, we're so glad that you are here. And great job this week, doing hard work, discipline, and really exhibiting courage performing on the world stage. And so let's give them a hand of applause for their great work this week. I must say, all of you are not here with the hard work and dedication and support of coaches, teachers, and parents. Being a parent myself of one of the competitors, I must say it was a little bit nerve-wracking, full of pride, but also just the sense of how someone from my gene pool that has no dance in its gene pool can perform on a world stage like this. But I want to give this opportunity to really thank the parents and the coaches and the teachers and the judges that have come so far to help these students, these young people to come here. So if you're a parent, coach, teacher, judge, if you don't mind just standing up so we can give you a hand of applause for bringing these young people to Thank you very much. We all hope you come back because Missoula, Montana, and this university is the center of international arts and global culture. And so we hope you come back to this beautiful state, this beautiful city again in the future. Well, today's Art of Diplomacy conference is a celebration of the arts in all its form, from dance to music, film, and even sports, and the powerful impact it has on our society. We know that the importance of the arts go far beyond just its aesthetics. But as you will see in today's panels, discussions, and performances, it is a powerful force that evokes emotion, provokes action in a community, and inspire an entire generation of people to do good. The arts can be used for healing, connecting people across boundaries, and yes, can even promote peace and trigger war. Today's speakers and performers represent the giants in the dance world from across North America, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. They'll be sharing their amazing lives and experiences. We will learn that politicians and ambassadors are not the only diplomats who represent different countries and cultures, but artists are emissaries and spokespeople of nations as well. So please enjoy the next few hours and be inspired by our speakers and performers. But before I invite up our next special guest, we want to take a few moments to thank a few people. First, we want to thank the Missoula Community Access Television for recording today's programming and allowing our broader community to gain access to quality programming like this conference and the Ballet Beyond Borders competition with a generous media grant donated by MCAT. And secondly, we'd like to thank the University of Montana and the Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater for help to support and sponsor this event. To open today's conference, I am honored to introduce the University of Montana's newest president, Seth Bodnar. On January 1st, he started his tenure as the university's 18th president of its 125-year history. We are so honored that President Bonner chose this program to be one of his very first public program of his presidency. President Bodner came to the University of Montana from General Electric Company, where he served on a number of distinguished leadership roles, including senior executive and chief digital officer at GE Transportation. He developed a widely celebrated reputation for being a visionary and transformational leader that led GE Transportation and GE Company to great success. President Bodner also served a distinguished career in the Army, including serving in Iraq and as a Green Beret. He was a top graduate and a professor at West Point. He was also a Rhodes Scholar and a Truman Scholar. President Bodner clearly appreciates international culture and global education, having both studied abroad and worked overseas. He also, I believe, speaks Chinese, and maybe he can demonstrate that during his speech today. Please help me welcome President Seth Bodner to provide a welcome to all of you. President Bodner.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kim. Thank you to everyone here. He did call me out a little bit, and 我会说一点普通话, but it has been a long time since I've spoken Chinese, and it's something I'm actually looking to refresh a little bit. But Abe is right. This is one of the first public events here at the university that I've been a part of, and I'm so happy that this particular event is in that position because this conference is a perfect example of the strength of the University of Montana. When I think about the world today, I think about the world that our students are entering, the world that I've lived in over the past 2 decades, in the government, in the military, around the world, in business. It is a complex, it is a dynamic world. Right? This is a world where we are sending 22-year-olds, sometimes 23, maybe 24-year-olds, but hopefully 22-year-olds that finish in 4 years, out into a world in which they have great skills. They have the skills to help them get their first job. But the reality is most of our students will have 7 jobs, 10 jobs throughout the course of their career. And when I think about what does a university need to do for a student today, what does a university need to do for its community today, it is preparing our students for a world of rapid change, a world in which they must be agile, lifelong learners, able to work across and understand different disciplines and have a holistic, not just skills-based education, but an education that's broad-based in the sciences, in the arts and humanities, with professional schools. And that fundamentally is what the University of Montana is about. This university has done that incredibly well for the past 125 years, and we're continuing to evolve and adapt our university to meet the needs of our students, to meet the needs of this state, to meet the needs of this nation today. So it is a privilege to be here at this conference, which I think epitomizes the unique value of the University of Montana, not just for our students, but for this community. And the arts are obviously an integral part of this university. And having a richness of understanding and appreciation of the arts is valuable for many reasons. I think first of all, just for the pure aesthetic value and the fact that having an understanding and appreciation and a valuing of the arts is an integral part of a full and enjoyable life. I mean, in and of itself, the arts are critically important. But I'd offer that even if you are not a professional artist, having a background and an understanding and an appreciation of the arts is incredibly valuable for your career. We've seen this throughout history. As many of you are well aware, Galileo and his success as a scientist, as an astronomer. Many attribute his success and his ability to differentiate from other astronomers, due to his background in the arts. Galileo was able to see what others could not see when he looked at the moon, and able to identify craters and able to identify mountains on the moon because of his background and understanding of art and his training in depicting 3D structures. We see this today. We are, at many medical schools in the United States, art history and visits to art museums are now an integral part of the curriculum to hone those skills of observation, to hone those vital tools of a physician to be able to see and observe and tease out the important aspects of a patient's position to come to the proper diagnosis. So as I look at our agenda, I am incredibly excited to see these types of discussions. I had a chance to visit briefly with Merritt Moore before we started, and Merritt and I both spent time at Oxford. Merritt just finished up her DPhil, and so we have a quantum physicist who's also a professional ballet dancer. And I am incredibly excited at some point to see Merritt's skills on the stage. But I will tell you, Merritt's skills as a quantum physicist are significantly enhanced because of her background in ballet, because of her background in the arts. And I think the third piece, and we all know this intuitively, but I think it's important to say, is the arts over history, and Abe hinted at this, have been a bridge across cultures, across languages, across faiths. They have been a common language for humans to communicate. As Abe mentioned, I spent a good portion of my life in the U.S. military, and a good portion of that living in different countries. I spent a fair amount of time living in a grass hut on a small jungle island in the southern reaches of the Philippines, bordering on Indonesia, living with a group of Filipinos, working to bring stability to an island that had not had that. And countless times during that experience, during experiences in Iraq, during experiences in Asia, arts and performances were a key piece of what started conversations, what kicked off events, and that cannot be underestimated. We see that throughout history, and we continue to see that today. And the title of this conference, I think, is a perfect example of that, The Art of Diplomacy. It continues to be a way that we in the United States and countries around the world interface in a productive and a positive way. So I am incredibly excited and honored to be here. I love the agenda. I especially love the session that we're going to have around lunchtime that says, Taking Over the World with Arts, the secrets of being a global leader and a global artist. Because fundamentally, what this university is about is creating leaders for an uncertain and unknown future. And that requires working across disciplines, having a broad base of knowledge that is invaluable for the complex and dynamic world that our students will be entering, that our students will be answering questions that we yet don't even know to ask. And the arts are an integral part of that foundation of knowledge. And I'm incredibly proud of what this university is doing here. And I'm excited to see many young students from around the world here today. And I know you have many different colors on, but I would encourage the students here today to see the great value of this university, to see the beauty of Missoula, and to consider making maroon your favorite color as you come here and you make a college decision that the University of Montana be at the top of that list, because this is an institution that, for me, it is an incredible honor to be a part of, and I am excited to continue its tremendous tradition of education, and I'd love for you all to be a part of it. So with that, I will turn it over back to Abe and to start today's program. But thank you again for attending, and I look forward to seeing you out throughout the day.
Thank you, President Bodnar, for the warm welcome and spending your time with us this morning. Now, to begin our programming, I'd like to introduce the first of many amazing international performances today. All the way from Seoul, Korea, our first performance is by the prestigious Seoul Arts High School. The title of their performance is Nori, or the Moment of Truth. The Moment of Joy. Help me to invite this amazing performance group to the stage and give their wonderful performance today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seoul High School, for that beautiful performance. Please join me in welcoming the moderator of our panel on creative brilliance, how the arts interact with the sciences, Marianne Bongiorni. Marianne Bongiorni is an accomplished artist, seeking to link the characteristics of solace amidst a beautiful environment with beating the odds of tragedy. She has recently lectured about the role of the arts in the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, seeing the natural coupling of the worlds of art and science. Please join me in welcoming the University of Montana's Professor of Drawing, Marianne Bongiorni.
Thank you. Yeah. Sit down. Yep. No, in the middle. Let's go in the middle. Wow, this is a great conference, and I am so thrilled to be asked to help moderate this first panel. Wonderful introductory talks. Now, get ready for the bull in the china shop, folks, because I'm it. I moved here from Las Vegas, and I immediately took on the task of coaching the rodeo team. So, if you want to know about roping horses, cattle, trucks and trailers, changing tires, and how to make a hub out of a canned peach can, I'm the gal. All right, and so what I want to say to all of you is that I celebrate you. The reason I'm here is because I believe in art. And I am steadfastly convinced that art and the ideas of diplomacy can help us move into the next decade and to the future. Our two wonderful doctors today, I'd like to introduce, recently received their PhDs, and I will read their bios. Dr. Merritt Moore is a ballet dancer, quantum physicist, jumping from lab shoes and goggles to point shoes and tutus. She has danced as a member of the Zurich Ballet, Boston Ballet, English National Ballet, and London Contemporary Ballet Theatre, and graduated with honors in physics from Harvard University. Moore recently received her PhD in quantum optics. I don't even know what that is, so we're going to have to ask her. Quantum optics, and from Oxford University, and hopes to inspire more young women to study science by showing them that there are no standard personalities or paths for doing so. She believes the arts and sciences are not mutually exclusive, and Moore has been working hard to juggle them both, encouraging other students to do the same. Moore was one of Glamour magazine's top 10 college women in 2010, was awarded Harvard's prestigious Michael von Clem Fellowship, and has won Oxford's TEDx Talks Dance with Your PhD competition in physics category. Our second panelist, and let's call it a discussion. How about that, all right? Is Erica Rose Jeffrey, also a doctor. She believes in the power of movement is connected to the positive social change. Originally from Missoula, Montana, yep, yeah. Jeffrey studied dance at the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater School before joining Ballet International. After dancing professionally for several years, she attended Indiana University as a Wells Scholar and graduated with degrees in ballet and meditation and conflict resolution. Since 2001, Erica has been working to connect dance, empathy, and peace, and she has worked internationally as a performer, choreographer, educator, arts leader, and facilitator. Jeffrey was also the first dancer to be selected as a Rotary World Peace Fellow, which led her to complete a master's in peace and conflict studies at the University of Queensland. Jeffrey's PhD work built upon her belief in the power of movement, investigating the connections of dance, empathy, and peace at Queensland University of Technology. She is currently the Director for Dance for Parkinson's Australia, and also the Director of Peace and Conflict Studies, the Institute of Australia. So please, with no further ado, welcome our two doctors. Yay. Our panel's format format today is we're going to start with some electronic images. We'll start with a couple videos, and we'll invite the two panelists to speak respectively about the images that they've submitted. Then I will go into a Q&A where I get to ask them a lot of great questions, and hopefully we get to know them a little bit better as people. And then I would like, if we have time, to open it up to the audience. So as you're experiencing this discussion, then be thinking if you have any questions for our two panelists. All right, so with that, I think, let's see, Shanti, should we start? Are we ready? Okay, we'll start with Erica. We'll start with you. All right. Yeah, these are already on. Are the microphones on, Shanti? Yeah, I think they are. Go ahead.
Good morning to everyone. Good morning. Oh, there we go. So this is a video from Australia, from Sydney, and some of the participants in Dance for Parkinson's classes there. So like many people, I wear multiple hats, and so this will let the participants themselves talk a little bit about the Dance for Parkinson's program. There'll be some shots inside the Sydney Opera House as well. So sitting beautifully tall. Richard, if you'd like to start. Just listening to the music.
People look at me and say, I'd never guess you had Parkinson's because I don't have a tremor.
Deep breath and breathing in.
I've been diagnosed for 10 years, but the last couple of years have been particularly challenging, and it's getting more and more challenging.
Dance for Parkinson's is a community dance class for people with Parkinson's and their partners or caregivers or family members.
We've been married for 47 years. We've been going since it started.
With the dancing, it just takes the fear away from you falling over.
In the consultation room, I often get on my soapbox and give a little lecture about the importance of physical activity, social interaction, mental stimulation, and Dance for PD gives all three of those.
It's definitely helped with my walking, yes, and it's helped with my balance too.
I'm certainly conscious of the fact that I don't get some of the movements a lot of the time, and, you know, it doesn't matter. And that's what's really nice. And so you can look around and see that other people aren't getting it either, and that's quite reassuring.
I see all these inspirational people around me carrying on with life, so it's wonderful.
It was that sense of being able to use your body in a way that wasn't like being a person with Parkinson's.
See, Shanti, do we have the second video for, okay, we got it. Go ahead, Erica.
So we work closely with the Dance for PD program that is with the Mark Morris Dance Group in New York. And we just wanted to show how dance can also be involved in innovation, in moving ahead, in solving some of those complex problems the President spoke about earlier. So this is just a short video about one of the projects that they've been engaged in.
Parkinson's is a debilitating movement disorder that affects more than 1 million people in the United States, including 50 to 60,000 new people every year. And to date, there is no known cure. That's why SS&K built Moving Through Glass, the first ever augmented reality application that uses wearable technology to provide round-the-clock aid to people living with Parkinson's. It started with a realization within Mark Morris Dance Group's Dance for PD program. The classes using the training and techniques of professional dance to enhance the balance, power, and coordination of Parkinson's sufferers were falling short in a critical way. Participants like me needed tools we could take beyond the classroom and into our daily lives. The agency was asked to find a solution. SS&K started with analyses, from classroom methods to available technologies to specialized user needs. Extending Google's Glass platform, they built custom software to maximize performance and simplify user inputs. Then they worked with instructors to distill choreography and music into short, stimulating modules to guide and inspire movement. From seated warm-up and balance building to walking stimulation and restart techniques in case users got stuck. SS&K shot original footage, recorded new music, and then tested with class participants. Finally, Moving Through Glass was presented to leading researchers at the Weill Cornell Medical Center. They requested their own glass for testing and called the application amazing, ingenious, and incredibly promising. Okay, Glass, balance me.
Shifting one side to the other.
Now, students like me have the tools to navigate the world outside the studio, whenever, wherever we need them.
Thank you, Erica. We'll be back in a minute. I think we'll move on to Merritt and some images. You'd like to speak about some of these images, Merritt? Is that all right?
Does this work? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I just submitted some images. I think, well, we can show. It was just my, it was my dressing room with the ballet and then jumping back into the physics lab. So I've taken time off, so I do 2 years of college and then 1 year dancing with a professional ballet company, or I was dancing double shows of Nutcracker at Boston Ballet, and in between the shows, so I'd like rip off the point shoes, jump in a taxi, get to the lab, and then put on like the full-on suit with the double boots and the gloves and the head mask and everything, deposit this metal on my nanochip, and then have to take everything off, put on the point shoes and the fake eyelashes, and then jump in a taxi, get back to perform that night, and then go back and finish up the experiment at like 2 a.m. in the lab. Little did I know, though, because I'd have double shows the next day, so I'd be stretching with my leg up while I was depositing this metal because it would take so long. And at the end of the month, the security guards came to me and were like, Mary, you know that there's CCTV cameras like on the thing. I was like, oh, I should have known. Yeah, so these are just images of my dance world and the physics world, which have always been quite separate, so I'd have to hide that I was dancing so much from the physics world and hide from the dance world. Like I'd kind of sneakily have my physics book underneath my dressing room table and then like just pretend like I was going out for lunch and then go and study. So they've always been very separate. And then at the end of the day, now, this year, I've just had it. I was like, I'm kind of sick of hiding these two passions from both of the worlds. And it just drives me crazy when people say like, to young kids, like you either have an analytic mind or a creative mind. And I'm like, at this point, I'm just like, no, there's no such thing as having two separate brains. Like people ask me, oh, is it hard to swap brains? I'm like, it's the same brain. It really is. Like I use the same creativity in dance in the science world and the same analytic processing in the dance world. So that's my slide.
Thank you, Merritt. That's great. And actually, maybe we can start the discussion now, ladies. I want to pick up on what you just mentioned, and maybe could you go to the next layer about how you do that? How do you vacillate between these two worlds that maybe from the outside we think of them, and I think that's probably a product of how we have developed knowledge in categories, and then how you bring those together.
Yeah. Definitely passion, right? Because I'd have incredible mentors, and they always wanted the best for me, but their advice was always, Merritt, like the physics professors would always say, Merritt, you need to quit this dancing if you want to be a physicist. And in the dance world, all the dance teachers who really wanted me to be the best that I could be would tell me I need to quit the physics if I really want to pursue dancing. But I do believe that now it's really helped to have two passions, because I can see so many of my fellow dancers who have only done dance their entire lives, like quit high school at age 12 and have just been dancing, they're completely burnt out. They're retired because, and it's not just physically, but I think mentally, something's just died in them, and then physically, they've become injured. And part of that is, I think that because you're in a studio all the time, because you're getting critique all the time, and it's mostly the critique of yourself, like I'm the worst of it, I'm always like, oh my God, Merritt, you're the worst, like you're so bad, like your feet are so bad, and this and that. But like that and the emphasis of the mirror, and so there's so much critique that just eats away at people, and after a decade, it just, you kind of burn out. But having two passions, like having the science, I'd be so excited because I'd been sitting in a library for 8 hours or sitting over an optics table like doing this. I was just like so excited to get into the dance studio and move that all of those worries and anxiety just, I didn't have time for it. And I was just so appreciative to be in the room.
Do you feel, talk a little bit about intuition. How does intuition play into both science and dance for you?
Well, now I test, and I'm sure you guys do this with the Parkinson's, but playing around with improv, because I think trusting your gut or trusting just your sensation of what's going to happen when the music plays and you just let yourself move and go with the flow, you begin to trust your own body, you get to trust your own gut, you get to trust, and you feel what feels most natural. And I love watching dancers who are also classically trained and told what to do, but they perform in a way that's unique and individual to themselves. And I think as well in the physics world, nowadays, the education process drives me crazy because like you're just taught to memorize and you have to do well on these SAT score like tests and you have to get an 800 and like just memorize it and do well.
Learn the test.
Learn the test. And I did. I was just like, memorize the method, or like you see the pattern and I'd be like, I have no idea what this harmonic oscillator is doing, but whatever, I can figure it out. And you do well on the exam, but you have no idea you have no intuition for the physics. But having done more dancing and doing improv, I now realize when I'm reading the physics, I'm like, I kind of tune into that aspect that I've been practicing of like, oh, okay, no, Merritt, like think for yourself, like think, what does this mean for me?
Possibly like, trust yourself.
Trust myself, yeah. And be like, okay, there's a different way. Like Einstein was so good at that, right? He used his creativity and imagination first before going to mathematical equations.
I have one more question for you, and this is because like I said, I'm the bull in the china shop, and then I want to move on and ask Erica a couple questions. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what you do with quantum physics?
Yeah, so I work in the atomic and laser physics department, so specifically quantum optics, and we work with particles of light called photons. So part of my PhD was creating two sources to create pairs of photons. That entailed having a big high-powered laser that if you put your hand through it, it would burn. I experienced that a couple of times, don't do that. So you have a high-powered laser, it interacts, you have it shine off mirrors and lenses, it goes into a crystal. And there's an interaction that happens when the laser light hits the crystal that produces pairs of photons, which we could then have going through fibers, and we would sneak these fibers across the ceiling and downstairs to our detectors without, late at night because the building faculty couldn't know about it. And we'd have these like fibers going through all over the place, and we'd shine the photons there, and you can interfere them and detect them. And
well, as a faculty member, Merritt, I'll tell you what I tell my students. What I don't know doesn't hurt me as long as it's clean at 8 o'clock Monday morning.
Yeah, okay. No one knows. It's all good. People might be stuck in the pipes for a little bit, but we get them out by 8 a.m.
Thank you. That explains it. Now we all know what that is. Eric, I'd like to move on to how you combine your research. I think as primarily a social scientist, correct, that it's sort of built in some of the integral parts of that. Could you please speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think that if we look at, so the two areas that I work in are around dance and peace, or so dance and international relations, and then dance and health. And so within those, there's both the process of analysis, of doing research, but also how we apply that kind of thinking. So, in the aspect of say, going to do a peace building program I work a lot in Papua New Guinea. So a lot of that is about, looking at what is the problem, defining what the problem is. So you're using a process of sort of analysis and then decision about how are we going to go in and address that. A lot of reflection, and then, okay, what do we want to do now? So then reapplying the way that you're going to think about things, which is the same that a lot of dancers do. So if you're a dancer and you're having trouble with your pirouettes, you look at what the problem is, you analyze it, you try some new things, you reflect, did that work or not? And then you use that to build forward in your dance training. In the dance and health aspect, so with Parkinson's, we work a lot with across sectors. So we'll be working with dance artists, musicians, physiotherapists, neuroscientists, and so it brings a lot of different knowledge into the room. And so we're using lots of different ways of measuring things, which is quite interesting, because one of the things that we may see in the Dance for Parkinson's program is that sometimes what we see in a dance class cannot necessarily be measured in the lab. And so part of that is, how do we have that conversation with people who see things differently than us and measure things differently to really understand what's happening? And I think that that's quite exciting, because a lot of that research involves both quantitative, so looking at numbers, and qualitative research. What are the stories? What are people saying about the experience? So to be able to combine those things creates, I think, a fuller picture of what's actually happening.
All right, thank you. What I'd like to do now, in particular, I formed this idea after stepping into Ballet Without Borders. I have to tell you, I walked in there thinking, okay, all right, let's just check this out. I couldn't leave. It was amazing. You guys are absolutely amazing. The discipline, the physical abilities, I was astounded. And I also thought, wow, I'm 60. If I start to dance now, maybe at 70, I can do something besides shuffle off the buffalo. So, in a grapevine. So you've inspired me. I'll keep track and tell you in 2 years what I'm doing, all right?
You said it to everyone. You have to.
Oh, no, I have to do it now. It's like, okay, bearing witness, let's see what the old gal's going to do next. I have been practicing playing the ukulele above standing on a horse, but now I can do it with 1 foot, okay? Okay, true story. What I'd like to do is back up for when you were younger, and maybe each of you, I'll start with Merritt again, talk a little bit about where you grew up and how dance and science maybe emerged, came to the top of the pond for you.
Yeah, so I was a kid. I didn't speak until I was 3, and even there, and I spoke like the bare minimum. Like I think I articulated things with my body, but would say sentences, like very short sentences and not very frequently. And I grew up in a family, but that emphasized academics, and so I grew a fondness for math, and I loved math, and I loved puzzles. It just made sense to me. Words did not. And then when I was 13, I don't know, my mom said that I wasn't allowed to do extracurriculars until I was 13, and finally there was some bribe that I was forced to do ballet because she wanted me to have good posture, but only for a year. But then after the year, she wanted me to quit, and I was like, no, I actually really like this. Like, this is sticking with me. And so that's where I just continued dancing. I never thought I was going to do it professionally, for sure, and went to Harvard, and oddly, it was performing there. There were tons of opportunities. There's tons of student-run organizations, and as students, we would just put on shows, and performing with a really friendly audience of friends, that's what I think made it possible to go on audition and get into Zurich Ballet.
That's great. So you were able to sustain that through college. I mean,
yeah,
which is really
college was
amazing.
my training, which
yeah.
but that was also, I was also nuts. Like that was like 40, 50 hours of homework that I was doing per week.
Okay, so let's just get to the quick here, folks. If you're type A and codependent and poor, you'll be a really great dancer, right? So, because you will have to just like muster it up and love it for whatever
You just
it is.
love it.
Yeah.
And so if it takes like studying in the splits, you study in the splits. Or,
Right.
in lectures, I'd be doing my feet exercises and sit like this. So it looked like I was leaning against the chair, but I'd be doing my abs. Like.
Yeah. Okay, let's try that, everybody. Are you ready?
You'd have an hour ab workout.
Yeah, there you go. Erica, what about you?
Well, as you mentioned, I did grow up here in beautiful Missoula, Montana. And I think from a very young age, I had passion of dance, and also this idea of peace or social justice. And so for me, that really came a lot from my grandmother, Millie Jeffrey. She was a very petite woman, but a giant agent of change. She was a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor that someone can receive in the States, for her work in civil rights, women's rights, and the labor rights movement. And the other thing about Millie is that she would always show up for my performances. So she was a huge supporter of the arts, and that was quite important to me. But she would also ask me critical questions, like, why are there only girls in your dance class? Why are there not more people, a more diverse group of people in your dance classes? Tell me a little bit more about ballet and how it functions in society. This was when I was 9. So, so these questions are things I've been thinking about for a long time. And I agree with what Merritt is saying, that this idea of that you have to pick one thing. Again, people are continually telling me, you need to pick one thing and focus on that. And I understand the value of that. But I also understand for me personally, the richness and being able to cross between different disciplines, different ways of windows into the world, and how for me that really enriches my experience and the way in which I'm able to navigate different situations. For example, in a lot of cases, if I'm doing more sort of strict sort of peace-building work, it can get very focused on what are the words that people are saying, and not so focused on what is the body language or the cultural context that we're engaging in. So from my dance lens, I can look in and say, oh, now might be a good time for us to incorporate some song into this meeting. Or what is, asking some stories that might have meaning that can help shift the conversation in another direction. So for me, I think the idea of those two passions going together. And Charlene has been such a great ambassador for that here in Montana by connecting people. And I have had adventures with Charlene in the international community, and it's always really wonderful about the relationships. And I think that's whatever field, the dance for young dancers, for working in peace work, for working in the dance and health with Dance for Parkinson's, it's about those relationships that we form and how we nurture those relationships. And I think that when we look at the idea of dance and peace, or if we look at arts and diplomacy, a lot of people in peace building, you'll see like theorists will talk about the idea of these networks of relationships, the webs of relationships, and that's how we build peace from either the top down, say the more formal forms of peace building like nation building, or the more grassroots levels. But where I think the arts play a role is that in between all of that web are the places where the arts are. And often it's the arts experience that creates the space for those relationships to be built around, that then create that web and network.
I would agree with that. Absolutely, thank you. And you answered about 5 of my questions quite articulately. Yes, you guys are on it. So I want to go to history for a minute. Could you, is there when you think of the history of science as it has been in your respective areas offered to you or delivered, and the history of dance, are there people, practitioners, theories that have inspired you? And if so, what are they? That's kind of a surprise question. I'm sorry. But I figure you're smart. Hey, you're doctors. So actually, Erica, let's go to you on this one.
Well, I think that it's interesting because sometimes it's the dancers that inspire me in other parts of my life as far as the political science. So I work more in, so as opposed to like physics science, more political science. And I think that, you know, for example, Agnes de Mille, famous dancer, she talks about how the truest way to understand a people is through their dance and their music, because bodies never lie. And for me, I really think about that idea of that sort of those nonverbal connections. I'm continually inspired, actually not so much by the big names, but by the sort of people I meet on the smaller scale.
Can you describe that?
Yeah, so for example, you know, you can come up with a really fancy, you know, term about collaborative narrative practice in community facilitation work. But when I'm in a village in the southern Philippines or in Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, and you have this interaction with our colleagues there who are working and doing these, you know, complex relational processes in the village without a PowerPoint, you know, they might have written things on the back of a rice sack, but really engaging in this practice of sort of trying to improve their lives there. To me, that's what's inspiring. And of course, you know, we can take all of the big names, but I just want to honor the people who are doing the work on a daily basis.
No, and that, you know, that's one of the things that I appreciate by the selection of having the both of you here, is that I think there's room for that breadth of inspiration. I'll mention something, then I want to go on and ask the same question of Merritt. But when I was reading through the roster of people who will be speaking today, and I told Erica this earlier, I said, wow, I saw the word movement a lot. And when, you know, when I was going through school, dance movement was always integral to it, but it was not really specified as something you could concentrate on. It's developed through the years, vis-a-vis through probably other influences, maybe talking about non-academic situations or even contemporary dance, that movement really became something more of a focus. And I was very happy to see that in the descriptions of what people do and their professionally. So historically, Merritt, are there either practitioners, times in history, what do you look at for inspiration?
Yeah. Well, Galileo was a good example, but Einstein, for me, I'm such a fangirl of Einstein, but because when he discovered special relativity, right? Like, he didn't go to the equations of, like, you know, the gradient of the electric field equals, like, the derivative of the magnetic field, right? Like, what he imagined was he visualized himself. He went to the movement of the physics, and he went, oh, okay, what is it like to be a light particle going, like, through space, and try to visualize being an electromagnetic wave? And that's how he came up with special relativity. And later on, he admits that he then he knew he was right, intuitively he knew he was right, but then he went and proved it mathematically so that he could get his colleagues to understand it. But, like, he first went to, like, his imagination and creativity. And so for that, I'm like, he's my, like, yeah.
So he's your go-to guy.
Go-to guy.
Yeah. And I've always appreciated that too. In the visual arts, my background, that is always used as the example because it's so kinesthetic that it's a tactile situation for visual artists. All right, the next question I'd like to ask is, as we look to the future and the different projects that both of you are doing, could you talk a little bit about what you think is on the horizon? Like, you might probably already have some things in the hopper. And then maybe what is that in relation to the future of art? You know, I think we're in very interesting times worldwide right now, politically. How does art play a part of that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's an essence of live performances that are so incredibly important in this day and age, especially now that we're used to the screens and et cetera. Like, there's some sort of thing where, like, energy is emanated and you just get it on a personal level. So live performances, I think, will always be so incredible.
Formal or informal, both.
Formal or informal, so incredibly important and crucial to maintain and preserve. Other projects, though, that are also, I think, exciting in combining science and arts is I worked on a virtual reality project that was at the Barbican this spring, and we used art and dance in a way to have people enter rooms where the rooms had like quantum mechanical behavior. So a lot of the times in textbooks, you're taught quantum mechanics and being like, so it's this phenomena that you've never experienced, but it happens at a really small level, just, you know, believe it. So what I wanted to do was to make it more intuitive. So when people go into a room, so I don't know, should I describe the physics? So if you look at in quantum mechanics, like it happens at a very small scale, but if you observe something, it stops moving. You kind of collapse the wave function, but when you look away, it'll start evolving. So for people to exit the room, this rock had to fall to the ground. And so most people would then focus on this rock, because that's, for us, that's what we do. But then they would get bored and look away, and the rock would start to fall. So we were trying to get people to get an intuition for the quantum mechanics, and so that's a project combining physics and dance, but also, so we made the experience aesthetic and fun in that sense, so it wasn't like textbook.
When you say that, I get really excited, and I think, I would like to see that in a museum, in an art museum. Different rooms and walking through and having that experience. So, hey, go to the art museums and see if they'll take on that project. Yeah, yeah, here we are. Erica, how about you?
Yeah, I think that we are in a place in the world where there's this aspect of, as you mentioned, screens, and so how are we interfacing with the world? And I think things like dance are also being used in these interesting ways to explain phenomenon, like scientific phenomenon. But it's also very important to think about this idea of embodiment and how we're continuing to physicalize our presence in the world, how we understand the world, and so that it's not that separation between brain and body, but that it's integrated. And so that's a lot of what my work has focused on, and how that integration allows us different ways of seeing and knowing, and perhaps provides those pathways for us to find these new solutions. So if we're looking at the idea of a conflict, and this is not advocating that we use dance within the midst of violent conflict, but if you have a meeting of people coming together and it's getting stuck on the verbal level, what are the other ways in which we can use the arts, use embodiment, use physicalization to move the conversation in a different direction? And also this idea of, you mentioned improvisation before. There's a lot of emphasis on, if we look at peace building, creativity and peace building, but what are the opportunities to actually practice that creativity? Because creativity doesn't just happen. It's something like you also have to encourage, engage, create opportunities for. It's the same thing with the Parkinson's community. When we look at the Dance for Parkinson's classes, it's not a cure. It's a quality of life approach to provide other options, but it's also about looking at different ways of cueing. So sometimes with people with Parkinson's, they freeze. They are not able to walk, but people will say to me, I'll hum the waltz and I'll do a bit of a waltzing movement, and that gets me going again. And so it's that creativity to be able to use movement to think differently, which literally allows these people to move forward. And I think for me, I'm really interested in how dancers can be involved in these discussions around shaping the future from, say, in dance and health, from a policy perspective. So there's growing arts and health movements here in the United States, in the UK, and in Australia. And these ideas of how do we integrate the arts more completely into health approaches. And that I think it's very important that dancers have a say in that. So it's not just a doctor prescribing, potentially prescribing dance, but dancers are involved in shaping how that might look, how are we going to measure if it's working or not, and so that's part of what's happening. As far as things that I'm working on moving forward, so we're with the Dance for PD program, working with the Dance for Parkinson's Australia and Dance for PD in the States, we're starting to offer teacher training and programs in China and in Korea and Malaysia, so expanding to work in the Asia Pacific region. And part of that is to continue to provide options for people living with Parkinson's disease, but also to continue to grow the bank of knowledge that we have about what are the different ways of moving, what are the different kinds of music, different cultural approaches. And from the dance and peace building perspective, for me, it's about articulating between the different forms. So that's what I'm trying to practice a bit more, is this idea of how do I translate what's happening in this dance context, like you were describing this experience, this physical experience at the Barbican. How do I translate this into the written page so that then it can be something that maybe an academic might read and say, oh, all right, I can look at it in a different way. How do I then translate these complex theories of, or international relations ideas into a dance concept, so maybe that they can be offered to people who might not necessarily think about that initially, and provide them a new way to look at things.
Wow. Yeah, right? Of course, coming from the tutorial end of things, I'm thinking, wow, what if we took Erica's situation and collaborated with Merritt's situation, walking through these rooms, and I'm thinking,
Ukulele.
of course with a ukulele, right, on horseback. But I'm thinking, wow, that would be amazing to see these two sort of trajectories possibly come together. So all I'm going to say is go, doctors, go. Hey, I have to tell you, we are up, and our time is up, and I do have to wind this down, and we'll get on to the next panel. I encourage you to approach both Erica and Merritt and ask any questions you might ask after the panel or as we're walking around today. I'm sure they would be pleased to answer it. And then I also have a little presentation for them, because I was on Merritt's website, and she has this beautiful TED Talk, and it shows her feet. A picture of her feet. Do you remember this, Merritt? And they're just beat up, right, from being in point shoes. Do you remember that image? Yeah.
It's a Google image.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. Well, she said it's a Google image, but I'm thinking, I wonder, like, what do you do with your feet when you're a dancer? And I got to thinking, and I looked and I went, we have point toes, round toes, and square toes. Well, my toes are like boats, right? So I don't wear pointed shoes, and I think they should be retired. However, I'm aware that dancers probably feel differently about this, and so I didn't want to have you leave this discussion without a gift, and I'm going to now present to you. So hold on, folks. Wait a minute. And you have to, do that. You can do the roll.
And if you want to know more, the Dance Your PhD is a really great competition. And so that is also a great way to see some of what Merritt has done with the physics, yeah?
So any dancer who wants to do a dorky dance, yeah, there's a competition called Dance Your PhD, and you get to dance about your PhD, which...
Okay, now I know that there's a baggage check involved in this, so I could ship these to you. However, if we didn't believe you have to hand I also want to say that, Missoula, I have been around the block in this American West End, and abroad, done a few things, and I have to tell you, this is the most amazing town I have ever worked in and lived in, because you can be an artist and go out there and perform and get a gallery and collaborate, and you have an instant audience. Missoulians will just stop everything they're doing and go, whoa, what's this? And you all know what I'm talking about, don't you? Because we have no parades. We have parades for cats, dogs, living people, dead people, things with wheels, things without wheels. Missoula loves parades, and I love beaches. So, with no further ado, to Merritt Moore, the Art of Diplomacy 2018 in Appreciation. And I want you to notice it's a golfer with a crown going back to the UK, right? So,
The UK...
The same thing, I want you to notice this, fit tightly into your suitcase. They're also great centerpieces. You can put peanuts or mince. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is our panel discussion, and we'll go on to the
Thank you for joining us on our panel on creative brilliance. Next, a Zulu dance performed by Andile Ndlovu, Le Sole Main, and Le Sole Main II on drums. Thank you, Andile Navolu, Lesole Main, and Lesole May II for that beautiful performance. The moderator of our next panel, Raphael Chacon, received his doctorate in art history with honors from the University of Chicago. Having been awarded numerous research fellowships to study in Europe, he has written and lectured on a wide range of topics, from medieval pilgrimage routes to contemporary memes that go viral on the internet. Professor Chacon considers himself an architectural historian, but is really a polyglot, looking at the role of art and culture in past and present societies. He has also been named one of the Smithsonian Institute's 5-star Smithsonian Journey experts. Please join me in welcoming Raphael Chacon.
Good morning. Isn't this been fantastic so far? Thank you to our performers and certainly to the panelists that we have heard. Ladies, please have a seat. It's a pleasure to speak with you this morning and to introduce the second panel of discussants to continue this very rich conversation that we're having about the nature of dance and movement and its interactions with the rest of of life itself. I come at this from the visual arts as a historian, and I tend to think of the visual arts as a nexus, a hub where life's values, our society's greatest virtues, and maybe our faults, all of those things collide and converge in the visual arts. But I think that is also clearly true of dance as well, and perhaps all the other arts. And I think it's been wonderful hearing how the arts have a capacity to link, to build bridges, to intersect with the rest of life itself, with the pressing concerns of life itself. So I hope that that's what our next panel, our conversation, will actually continue to expand upon. That idea that dance is a catalyst, a nexus, a hub, a way, a means of, in fact, building bridges and extending ourselves into the fullness of our humanity. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers, and it is indeed a privilege to stand up here and to be on the same stage with these two brilliant and beautiful, may I add, dancers, performers, and teachers. Yes. So actually, my first question to them will be to ask them about their trajectories, much like what Marianne Bongiorni asked in her first question this morning. So we will actually, in a minute, hear about their trajectories from a more personal perspective. But I'd first like to give you sort of the rundown, a little bit of an introduction as to who these individuals are. Peggy Boussounis is a teacher and a dancer, a first-class dancer, I might add. She has been trained in ballet, in tap, jazz, flamenco, and she studied first in the Academia de Danzas Ileana de Sola y Josefina Nicoletti in Panama. And she has, since graduating from that institution, she's gone on to teach Nicoletti's body language. And in addition to that, performed in about 15, if not more, theatrical montages. So we'll hopefully hear more about Nicoletti's body language and her experience at the Academia de Danzas Ileana de Sola y Josefina Nicoletti. She is, in fact, a folk dancer, or at least is dedicated to Panamanian folk dance. And in fact, her present-day function is as the general manager of the Ballet Folclórico Panamá Danzas Hoy. So let me translate that. That's a folkloric ballet of Panama, contemporary or today's dance.
Sorry, I can interrupt you.
Yes, please do.
Panamá Danzas Hoy was my teacher Armando Julio, he just passed away. So I'm not the general, I'm not with the Panamá Danzas Hoy.
Okay.
I'm with Centro de Artes Escénicas, and there we teach folkloric dances also.
Beautiful. And we will get to see your performers, your dancers here this morning.
Two dances.
Two dances from the Centro de Artes Escénicas de Panamá, where you are indeed the general manager today.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that correction. Our second panelist this morning is Caridad Martinez, who was technically a principal dancer, but we know what that means. She was a prima ballerina with the National Ballet of Cuba. And also not only trained in Cuba's National Ballet School, but also in the Instituto Superior de Bellas Artes, or the Institute of Higher Arts in Havana. She has danced as a principal dancer on all of the world's great stages, many of the world's great stages, and has lived and taught in many parts of the world today. She has taught in Mexico, where she is the founder and also the artistic director of the Cuban School of Ballet Veracruz, where she was director actually for 13 years. And since then, she has been involved with a number of important companies: the Havana Ballet Theater Company, Mexico's Beaux-Arts School, the Brooklyn Ballet, the Ballet Hispanico School of Dance, where I believe she is presently choreographer, conservatory director and teacher. Is that correct? Okay, great. So, and she has also done a number of projects, choreography for television, ballet, and modern dance. So please help me welcome to the University of Montana, Caridad Martinez on my far left, and Peggy Busunis on my immediate left. Okay. That's really most unfair, ladies. But actually, it feels nice to be flanked or bookended by such amazing talent and brilliance. So the first question is, in fact, a question about your professional training, obviously, and also your personal trajectory. So I would ask you both to tell us a little bit about how you got here. How have you become the brilliant and successful first-class dancers and teachers that you are? So who wants to start? Peggy?
Hi, my name is Panayota Busunis, but you can call me Peggy for short. I trained in ballet since very little. My teachers, my mentors are Ileana de Sola and Josefina Nicoletti. They are the pioneers of ballet in Panama. I studied in Ileana de Sola and Josefina Nicoletti's academy, and also in all the styles that you mentioned. And and one is, she's not longer with us, so they left me the school to manage it, and then I changed the name to Centro de Artes Escénicas, which means a Center of Performing Arts, because since little I've been in plays and in musicals, and I love acting so much and singing so much also. So with other friends, we managed to make a Center of Performing Arts in Panama and put all the arts under one roof. That was my dream since very little. And I've also, I began with folkloric dances. It's very funny because when I was very little, you know, in Panama, in the curriculum, you have to do a folk art in elementary school. And you have like folkloric dances and art, and they teach you about everything. And in the school, we had like a folkloric group. And I auditioned every year to go to the folkloric group, but I've never been accepted. One time I asked the teacher that ran the folkloric group, and I asked, what can I do to be better, to enter the group? And he told me that I had to shake more my hips. And I was like, oh. And I shook my hips so much, and I bought an hula, you know hula, to practice, a hula hoop, to practice my hips, because he told me, you have to move your hips more. And when in the last year of school, he told me the truth. He told me that he didn't have a male partner to dance with me because of my height. And in Panama, all dances, folkloric dances, are danced in couple. So that's why, and I was like, oh. But then I had my opportunity on a musical that was based on Panamanian legends, and I met Armando Julio, which was my professor, and he cast me, and then I became part of his group, Panama Danzas Hoy, and that was my way to be on folkloric dances, which I love a lot. And that's a little part of my story, of my beginnings in ballet and folk dances. Do you know where Panama is? I have a question, because so many people don't know where Panama is. We're a little country in the middle of the Americas. You know the Panama Canal, right? Yeah, perfect.
I thought you were going to say that Greek Panamanians don't move their hips as well as other Panamanians.
Oh, I'm very tropical. My parents are Greek, but I was born in Panama, and I'm a tropical person. I like snow, but I like warm, humid, tropical Panama. But I know how to shake my hips.
I would hope
Yes.
so.
Why are you asking that? I took the Zulu class with the beautiful dancers that did the dance, and I shook my hips very well.
Good, very good. You know, those of us who know Cubans often talk about us having two-way hips.
Two-way hips?
You know, they move and never mind.
But, yeah.
Thank you. So let me just ask you another personal question. When did you know that you wanted to be a professional dancer?
I don't know. I've always liked to move. You know, when I was little, I had problems talking, like married. I talked, but I talked very bad. I talked like Greek and Spanish and English. I was a mess. So I think I always moved my hands to explain myself. So I've always loved to dance and to move and to, yes, I love the arts. I don't know, it's in me.
Beautiful, beautiful. When did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
Always.
Always?
Always, yes, always. I don't know why. A teacher of something. I like to teach. I like children. That's the thing. I like children. I like to be with children. And one teacher told me that children are like the fountain of youth. If you're always surrounded with children, you will always be young. And that stayed with me, and I think that's why I love to be with children and to teach.
And you would never discriminate against them because they were too tall, right?
No, too tall, too short. If they can move their hips or not, I don't care. You can dance.
And of course, that means children of all ages, right?
All ages.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Peggy. Caridad.
So I think I cannot separate my childhood, my neighborhood, for what the Cuban ballet, my career it is. I was born in a very popular Cuban town, Cayo Hueso. Can I say it's Bon Key?
Key,
See?
yes.
Yeah, Key. It was a very, very popular. Most of the musicians, artists, singers came from that neighborhood. And I was that popular kid that I was dancing in the street, in the parade, the percussions. So the first thing that I danced, it was all the dance with African influence, Afro-Cuban. And that was something very strong on me, the rhythm. But at the same time, my mother always brought to me to see the L'Opéra de Pekin. In that moment in Cuba, we had a lot of collaboration with China, with Soviet Union. So my mother brought me, my mother didn't have an education, but she always brought me to watch L'Opéra de Pekin, all the Russians, folklore dancers, concerts. So I had movies. So I knew everything about Fred Astaire, James Kelly. I saw everything because my mother brought me. So I had a very, very wide perspective about, no, it wasn't conscious, but I wanted to dance. And I wanted to be an actress. It wasn't clear for me. I realized that about actress or ballet. I didn't know. I saw everything as one thing. So, and I moved very well. I danced very well. And my father was a percussionist. I played percussions when I was very young. So when it came I saw the movie The Righteous. That was in the moment when I realized that the ballet dancer dance on point. And that was the point when I decided that's what I really want to do. So I auditioned for the National Ballet School, and I was accepted. And then I was very lucky in that moment. The director was Fernando Alonso, the person that created the methodology. And so he was my teacher, and Alicia Alonso, Joaquin Banega. So I learned from the root of the school. And also my character teacher, all of them were Russians. So we had I was really lucky to have a very sophisticated learn of ballet, education on ballet. And on that moment, my school was a board school. So we had every night, we watched movies, sometimes with the director, so we had discussions. We had to see visual arts shows. We had to go to see modern companies because they were aware that it was very important for a ballet dancer to have a very wide knowledge of all the different disciplines. And I remember when I was young, I didn't want to go. It was mandatory. But in the way that I was growing, I was 10, so then you fall in love with that. And then later you appreciate that I had in front of me Leo Brouwer, one of the masters musicians, guitar musician and composer. I had the writer Alejo Carpentier that always, when he went to Cuba, he sat down with us talking about Diaghilev, and he was all my friend. He talked in a very nice, funny Spanish because he was in France. So he talked about that. And we learned a lot from him about how was art in your ballet, specifically in Europe. But when you are young, you don't appreciate that anymore. But then you are growing and you understand how that knowledge impacts in your life as a performer. So I graduated the school and I went straight to the National Ballet of Cuba. It was fantastic. That was, it's called the golden age of the National Ballet of Cuba. At that moment, the company was considered one of the 5 best companies in the world.
Cari, may I just interrupt you for a second? So essentially what you're telling us is that there is a broader education before you actually did your ballet training or the training within dance itself, within the discipline. So you're talking about poets and musicians, of a sort of a broad array of teachers.
Exactly. We had everything. We had ballet, music, piano, arts, art, music, character, dance. We have folklore, Cuban folklore and Latin American folklore. So it was a very, very French. It was a very, very complete education at that moment.
Let's come back to your professional training in a second, but I want to come back to Peggy here and ask you if you felt that also in your development as a dancer, as a professional, you also had that sort of sense of a broad base and many professors from different disciplines that also contributed to that.
Yes, in Panama, Panama is a commerce country, you know? So we have art, we have theaters, but they're not many, you know? And, you know, my dream was to put everything I like under one roof. When I was little, if I wanted to take like a acting class, I had to go a little bit far, not that far, but I have to go somewhere else. And if I wanted to take dance class, I had to go to the other extreme. It wasn't like everything near, you know? It wasn't handed to me. And in school, we have like art, but it's very poor, you know? In my school, they tried to put like too much information in my head of math, and I like math, but it was too much math, too much like sitting on the chair all day, and it wasn't fun, you know? I didn't have like movies I didn't know what ballet was until my mom took me to a ballet class. And I was like 7, 8 years old. I've never seen ballet before. And that's the thing, my education was very different. In Panama, now we're having like this movement and with internet and all that stuff. When I was little, internet was beginning, you know? We didn't have like YouTube and that kind of technology that you can click a button and you can see whole ballets or whole movies or plays, you know? In Panama, we have more. But when I was little, I had to go like in different places to get like a glimpse of what theater was, acting was, singing was. So now we're working on that.
So I think it's essential in both of your cases that you do have this kind of broad base of knowledge in order to become a professional dancer. That seems essential.
No, it's different. Because in Cuba, we were part of, agree or you don't agree with the political system. But in the moment where I was studying, if something that system understood is that art and sport is the face of the country. And Fidel Castro and the revolution, they want to let the countries know that Cuba was, our education, our sport was the best. We were poor, but we had the best education. So it was something that it was very, very important for the government to let the world know. So our school was selective. Every year we had several and very strict tests. If you didn't pass it, you were away. When you study in Cuba, you study to be a professional. It wasn't a recreation in art, science, sport. It wasn't recreation at all. You are in the school because you are going to be a professional. That's what the restriction was, very, very tough.
So we clearly have two very different trajectories. In the case of Panama, they're both Cuba and Panama are Latin American countries, sister countries in many ways, culturally very similar, and yet because of the political systems, very, very different. The dance has a very different profile, if you will, in the sort of the national landscape.
See, absolutely. And this school at this moment, the Cuban National School, is still building one of the best dancers in the world. If you go and see in the main companies, see Ociel Gounod, so many Latin names, and most of them are Cubans. And then Cuba started, because Fernando Alonso had always the mission that Latin America should work with the Cuban training. He always thought that it was something that it was good for our bodies and something that Cuba could export. And in Mexico, practically most of the country in Latin America they have Russian and Cuban teachers. It's a methodology that most of them, if you ask, they are Russian or they are Cuban.
Let's actually, this is a decidedly political panel in some ways. The conversation is indeed, touches on politics in much the way that the first panel talked about, the ties between science and dance and sociology and dance. I think that clearly dance is political, and it also affects global politics and is affected by global politics. So I wonder if we could go ahead and dive into that, in that pool of maybe icy water, and talk a little bit about the political landscape and how that has in fact shaped your development as a dancer and as an artist. Do you feel in some ways that the politics under which you were educated and the politics under which you were trained as artists, you became professionals, do you feel that in some ways that has shaped who you are as artists? The question is, do you feel that the national politics of your countries, and of course our panel is, as you may know in the program, is called When the Arts Go South. So we're talking about Latin America, but also maybe we're also talking in a metaphoric sense too. We'll come back to that point in a minute. But do you feel that your national politics, in fact, impacted your development as an artist?
Well, as I mentioned before, Panama has always been a commerce-oriented. We're a very young country. We're like 100 years and something. But since the beginning, Panama was like a pathway for trade. So it's a lot of emphasis on trade, commerce, making money, Panama we have a very good economy. Obviously, we have the canal. But I think arts and education are like left a little bit aside, so we have like 2 generations before mine that they were fighting for cultural policies, and they're like non-existing in Panama. So we're still trying to have like some order in arts in Panama. We're like a jungle, like. You want to survive, you have to do it alone, or you have like make alliances because nothing is really structured. We're now getting structure. We're now making alliances. I'm in Amigos del Ballet Nacional, which is Friends of the National Ballet of Panama. And we try to get funds for the National Ballet of Panama and for them to make other big productions of ballets and take dance to everyone. So I think we have a lot to work. Panama, every time we change government, is like you have to change everything, So it's difficult, but I think we're going in the right direction. We only have to have more structure. I think that is the thing in Panama. We have to have more structure and to combine arts with education, which is like non-existing in public schools and in private schools also. They have the mentality that you have to make money. You have to work and have money and to be someone.
Does the Cuba model that Caridad spoke about, which is obviously a socialist model, kind of a top-down model, I would say, does that model influence at all what happens in Panama? Do professionals in Panama look to a place like Cuba for inspiration or guidance or as a model?
Well, Cuba is like a model, yes, because in Panama, you don't necessarily. Dance is not seen like a profession, It's very difficult because if you say, I want to be a dancer, I want to do arts, people are like, you are going to have to do another job. It's not seen as a profession. It's not clear. That's the problem. It's not clear. So we see Cuba like an inspiration, We know we can have professional dancers that doesn't have to have like 2 other jobs or that can dance and perform. But yes, we see Cuba as an inspiration. We bring Profesora Caridad all the time to Panama.
Beautiful. So, Caridad, so then tell us how the system under which you were educated, in fact, led you to a global stage.
Okay, I think there is one point that is important to say. Even I'm not agree with the system, I have to say that there is something that is obvious, that I'm here and I had the education because that system. At that moment, because my parents never could afford a school with the high caliber, can I say that, of learn of education if it wasn't like that. Because I came from a very poor family, so I never had that education. But Alicia and Fernando Alonso, they made their career in the United States, and Alicia is a big, a big star, and Fernando Alonso, and so they were very close to all that moment when Balanchine, Jerome Robbins, so they had all that energy. And even they were successful in America, they wanted to develop in their country their own company, the Cuban company. And they all also wanted us to have their own voice, the mix of our root that is Africa and Spain. And I grew up learning because we want, in that moment, we have a lot of Soviet Union, Russian dancers, and amazing dancers. And they were taking classes when I was in the company with us. And I remember I was very young. So I started copying, and Alicia passed beside me and said, "You are not Russian. We use the arms more on the front. You are not Russian. Don't put the arms on the back." Because she didn't want us to imitate. Or Fernando said, learn from them and filter. You have to take what it works for your body, but don't imitate. And we didn't have the internet, but I was lucky to grow up with amazing dancers. Lloyd Paraújo, who is now Associate Director of the English National Ballet, Azary Pliseski, who was Russian, but he se aplatanó, I don't know how to say that. He absorbed the Cuban culture and he never tried to impose the Russian technique on us. He was bringing from the Russian technique, and he's the Asaf Meserev, Pliseskaya, they are, the top of the ballet in Russia. But even that, those teachers, they never tried to impose their way to do it. So I think it's important to know that we wanted to be successful, and we wanted to have a first world company, and that was something that I also heard from Fernando Alonso. We are a third world country, but this company is going to be a first world company. So you have to behave like that. So that's why we had all those exposures to films, music, visual arts, because they want us to have that knowledge. Because also we were not, in Cuba, we didn't have the internet, we didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know about a lot of people from America. I knew more from Europe in visual arts than from America. That happened after for us. And I don't have to say why, why. But it's important also that I think in the beginning the government, here they really want us. Everybody had the opportunity to have the same high level of education. But then those things become a little against, because at the same time that they gave us, they wanted to control what you can and what you cannot do. And that's why the moment when I left the company, because even in the moment when the National Ballet of Cuba had a very diverse a repertory that is not happening anymore. They are doing just the classical, practically, a few contemporary pieces, but they don't have, in the moment when I was, yes, I danced Balanchine, Jerome Robbins, Forsyth, I did a lot. Brian McDonald, a lot of, and very strong Cuban choreographers, like Alberto Mendez, if I don't know, the people that saw the piece last night, and we have 3 more Cuban, very, very important choreographers. So the repertoire was very, very diverse. And the system wanted the war, you know, they sold us. They sold our level of art as the face of the system that it wasn't exactly like that. I don't know if it makes sense.
And they must have seen, and they must have seen something unique and special about Cuba, Cuban dancers, the ethos, if you will, of the dance. Let me jump to a question which I think I proposed to you guys earlier, but I think maybe this is the moment to talk about it. We talked about first world and third world, right? And you both come from the third world, and you have been obviously impacted by an education that maybe comes or is tied to the first world, and you aspire to that first world status. But is there something that Latin America or the third world in general has to contribute to the world, the global world of dance today, that is unique and special, and maybe will open doors for all of the world?
I think diversity. Diversity. We have, we are like a third world country, if you want to say it, but we are very diverse. We have people from, we're in Panama, we have people from all over the world. We're like a melting pot of different cultures melt together. So we have like this diversity that I think in the first world countries need, you know? In Panama, we had like a wave of Venezuelanos that Venezuelans that they were like flying dictatorship. And first it was like a big shock because there were too many in a little period of time. But if you look now, we're like, they're marrying Panamanians. We're like now they're part of the melting pot, you know? We don't have like that big shock when you have like a group of immigrants, because in Panama is made of immigrants, you know? The only people that can say are from there originally are the First Nations, you know? And the First Nation, we all have melt together, and now we have like this, so many styles of everything, and I think that's what makes us complete. Mm-hmm. And I think dance is a humane way to melt cultures together, and I think that is what a First Nation can learn from Latin America.
First world nation,
yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Gadi?
Yeah, I think Cuba, because the geographic position had a very strong art, very, very strong in art in general. Everybody passed through Cuba before to get America. So we had Ana Pavlova, we had Caruso, all the big stars from Europe, they passed and they perform in Cuba. And that impact, that I'm not a sociologist, but impact. And I think Cuba had bring to the war the music, a very strong methodology. Most of the country in America, that's the school. And right now, teachers, ballet dancers from Cuba are all over the world. And that is impacting a little bit in a negative way to Cuba, but I'm a very positive person, and I think it's going to happen that they will come back at that certain moment with all what they have learned, because they are dancing in the best company, working with the best choreographers. So I think they are going to bring back all that knowledge to Cuba.
Thank you, Caridad. Thank you, Peggy. And would you help me congratulate and thank both of these brilliant minds and for their comments and their contributions to our panel today. Thank you so much.
Bruno Augusto is the co-founding director of Arts and Above, a not-for-profit interdisciplinary arts organization based in Missoula, Montana. He is also a faculty member at the Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater. Bruno Augusto holds a diploma from the National School of the Arts in Havana, Cuba, a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Towson University in Dance Performance, and a Master of Fine Arts from Tisch School of the Arts at New York University in Dance Performance and Choreography. He will be performing Angolan Stories, number 1, a depiction of a series of incidents that occurred during his upbringing, which have brought him to call America his home. Direction by Kate Jordan of Arts and Above.
Hello. I am Angolan and almost American. I come from my father through my mother, but I live where I call home. I grew up in a torn-down city where my childhood friends died. But now I live in a place where I can feel free. I was scared. Really, really scared. But now, I just worry. Because I want my loved ones to be in peace, and I want this country to embrace that peace. You see, I'm not saying that we have to be friends, you know, because we don't have to agree. But we can coexist. In Angola, you are either good or bad, alive or dead. In America, from my own perspective, I realize that there is room for communication. It's still a struggle, but it's a possibility. And because of that, I call this country